Something we saw back when we talked about the SN2 was that solvent can play a role in the reaction. Well, that's true for the E2 as well. So what did we see? For SN2, we really wanted an aprotic solvent. Those worked the best, and those included solvents like DMSO and DMF. I mean, those are just really the classic all-star solvents for an SN2. If you used a protic solvent, and what were those protic solvents? Things like water or alcohols. Then you ran a higher risk of low nucleophilicity of your anion. And how did we explain this? Well, we said we have some nucleophile, and our nucleophile will hydrogen bond to our water or alcohol, and this is referred to as a solvent shell. And by encapsulating our nucleophile in this sphere of hydrogen bonded solvent molecules, our nucleophile becomes less nucleophilic. And when I think of this, I always think of there's a cartoon called The Incredibles, and there's Mr. Incredible, and he's big, burly, strong person. And in this one scene, they incapacitate him by coating him with these kind of black tar spheres. And he just becomes immobilized and ineffective. And I kind of see this as what's going on with this solvent shell. You have your fantastic nucleophile, which is being coated in this solvent shell, and now the nucleophile is dragging around the solvent, and it's simply much less potent. It's much less nucleophilic. Regardless, the nucleophile is still a reactive anion. And if it can't act as a nucleophile, it will start to behave in a different way. It can still act as a base, so it will become basic. So the nucleophile can't fit into the nooks and crannies of the molecules, so the nucleophile says, the heck with it, I'm still a reactive anion, I'll just bump into a hydrogen that's dangling off of a molecule. So the anion becomes a stronger, instead of becoming an acts as a nucleophile, it becomes basic. So protic solvents were bad for SN2s. Doesn't mean you can't do an SN2 with a protic solvent, but it stacks the deck against the SN2. And what's it do? It increases the basicity of our nucleophile. And so what happens is we start to favor the E2 reaction with protic solvents. Now, if you remember, what are our typical bases for an E2? Things like sodium hydroxide and sodium alkoxide. What solvent do we use with hydroxide? Water. Protic solvent favors basicity. What do we use with alkoxides? Typically, not sodium. We use an alcohol, a protic solvent. So these are the solvents that you normally see used with your anions, which happen to be strongly basic, and we use solvents that further favor their basicity, and so these solvents become associated with E2 reactions. You'll see DMSO and DMF rarely used with an E2. Typically, it's protic solvents in use for an E2 because it enhances the basicity of our reactive anion.